Okay, everyone, I think we're ready to start. I'd like to welcome you to the first community meeting for this strategic housing plan. My name is Judy Barrett. My firm is working with the town on this project. I was here a few years ago working on the housing production plan in 2017 and 18. Some of you look very familiar and may have participated in the Legos activity, you probably remember. I also worked here before that on a previous housing plan and also some zoning work as well, and was sort of tangentially involved in the Chapter 40R project in 2018-19. Their dates get confusing after a while. Anyway, I'm joined tonight by my colleagues Alexis and Fiona is somewhere here. And we're available, there you are. And so we're available to talk to folks as needed. I just want to kind of walk you through what we're doing tonight, introduce the folks from the town who are working very hard on this project, and set you off to do the activity that we have designed for you this evening. So there is a team of people working on this project. It isn't just consultants coming in from the outside. There is a housing task force, and I apologize if you can't read these slides. The light in here is not very forgiving. So if I read slides more than I typically would, it's because I'm not sure you can see them. But there is a list up here of the housing task force members, and I might just call out names quickly, and maybe you could just wave or something to let people know. Alan, is Alan here? Ann Mara, I know, is here somewhere. There you are, in the far back, with the station on Needs. Is that where you are? Okay. Barbara? Is Barbara here? There you are, back there. I thought you were here. Dave McCollum? Okay. Jackie Sullivan? Lisa Olney? There, I knew you were here because I talked to you earlier. Marjorie Freeman? And Mark Charney? Maura Renzela? Corey Testa is here somewhere, and Tom Taylor. Okay, so we have several of the housing task force members here, and of course Megan, who are working with very closely on this project, and Eric from the planning department. We're all here to help tonight as needed to explain the project to you and answer any questions you have. So this is really a simple meeting. I'm going to do a short presentation about what we're doing, what this project is, kind of what the timeline is, and we're then going to set you off to do a series of activities with the stations that are arranged around the room, and I will explain all of those to you when I get to that point in the presentation. So the strategic housing plan, the town decided to embark on this actually a while ago. It's in part because the town housing plan that was done in 2018 had expired. Those are typically 5-year plans. But some other things happened in the interim that made sort of the focus of this plan a little bit different from what was done in the past. So the point of the project is to identify some new strategies to create options for households at all ages and income levels, and identify methods to address barriers to housing stability, affordability, and so forth, and ensure access to decent, affordable housing as a matter of choice, not chance. So that's sort of the overarching kind of goal of the project. We are working under a timeline that just want to assure you this is not the only opportunity people are going to have to participate in this process. We're in phase 1 right now. We have just started talking to people, interviewing folks, kind of getting caught up on what's happened in town over the last 6 or 7 years, since I was last here. We're updating market data mainly for Wellesley, but also kind of looking at what's happening a little bit around the periphery. There's no such thing as a housing market that's entirely confined to one community. You're part of a sub-region, and so we're looking at the context for what's happening in Wellesley. This is our first community meeting. We're going to be moving into phase 2 around August, and I say August because over the next several weeks we still have a lot of data analysis to do and more people to speak with on a more informal basis. So in the phase 2 part of this project, which we're anticipating is August timeline, there'll be another community meeting in September, which we will be preparing for in August. We're looking at rolling out some draft strategies for public review in September, and maybe making a preliminary presentation about how we think this plan is going to shape out toward October. In phase 3, there will be a complete draft plan available for review and comment. The timeline for that comment period will really be determined by the town, not by the consultants, but it will be available for review, hoping to make the final presentations on this project to the community in December. So things have happened here, which is part of why we're doing this project now. It isn't that Wellesley has done nothing over the last several years. Actually, a lot of things have happened. So one of them, of course, is about the MBTA Communities Law. And your town has already taken steps to comply. 71 communities in eastern Massachusetts have adopted some form of MBTA community zoning. There are 11 that have rejected it. There are 3 that sent it back to the planning board for further review. And so we're now watching communities working toward their fall town meetings, because there are many communities that still need to comply by the end of December, and they're not there yet. But your town was early in this process, and so credit to all of you for taking that on. Amendments were passed to your inclusionary zoning requirements to expand the reach of inclusionary housing in Wellesley. And then also accessory dwelling units updated in 2023 to allow for accessory dwelling units. Attached ADUs are permitted by right. ADU is accessory dwelling unit. I'm going to start defaulting to acronyms, and I apologize. So ADUs that are attached, meaning kind of connected to the single-family home physically, are allowed as of right under that bylaw change. Detached accessory units, which would be like a backyard cottage, or just separate from the single-family home, require a discretionary special permit. And the first ADU was built in April of 2022. So things are happening with accessory dwelling units here and in many communities that we work in. You may all be aware, and if not, I'll just share with you, that part of the governor's housing bill includes a provision to require communities to allow accessory dwelling units as of right. So again, you're kind of cutting edge here in terms of what's coming at the state level. So the work on this plan really is a sequel to a lot of things that have happened here. First of all, when I worked on the housing production plan 6 years ago, the town was not at the 10% minimum under Chapter 40B. And if you're not all familiar with that, I will give you the 2-second explanation, which is we have a state law that's been on the books since 1969, which obligates communities to have at least 10% of the housing in their communities affordable to lower moderate income people. So back then, in 2018, we were working on a housing production plan, which is a creature of the Chapter 40B regulations in Massachusetts. So it's a very prescribed kind of plan that the intent of which is to help the town move toward that 10%. Well, you did that. Meanwhile, of course, and in part the way you got to the 10% was adopting what's called a Chapter 40R district that enabled the project known as the Nines. And so that zoning, that's actually zoning, not a requirement under Chapter 40B, but it helped you create the rental units necessary to get to that over 10%. Meanwhile, however, there were a number of Chapter 40B comprehensive permits going on when I last worked here, some of which were more controversial than others. One of them at least I think turned out quite nicely. I suppose it depends on the abutter perception how they all turned out. But in any case, there were a number of comprehensive permits happening, and I think the town's position was, we really want to sort of stop this and get our arms wrapped around this requirement so it happens on our terms, which was the genesis of the Chapter 40R district. Certainly. So Chapter 40B is a state law that's been on the books since 1969. A community that does not have at least 10% of its housing affordable to lower moderate income people and recognized by the state as affordable are vulnerable to what's called a comprehensive permit, which enables a developer to come to your community and propose the construction of lower moderate income housing in places where you may like it or you may not. But the developer is very much in the driver's seat under Chapter 40B. Once you get over 10%, the balance shifts. The nines definitely contribute to it. You are now at 10.68%. You have met it, yes. I'm going to get there, but I'll just give you the, it's a good question because it kind of depends on a variety of things. The Chapter 40B concept is a household whose income is at or below 80% of the regional median. So you're part of the Boston metro area. So 80% of the median for the Boston metro area or below, based on household size, determines what's affordable under Chapter 40B and under Chapter 40R. Under inclusionary zoning, you may create affordability at higher income limits. It won't count on the subsidized housing inventory, but if you're concerned about a range of affordability, you certainly can do that. It's just that it doesn't count toward Chapter 40B. Can you hold your questions and let me get through this? Because I'm happy to answer questions, but I'm old enough to know that I'm going to lose track of this if I don't keep going. In any case, you met the 10% under Chapter 40B. COVID happened, and COVID has affected a lot of the market data that we have available right now on both rents and sale prices, and I'm going to allude to that a little bit later. There has been a rapid growth in your housing sale prices here, especially condominium prices. Your household growth has happened generally in the highest income tiers. I don't think that's any real surprise to anybody, given the price of homes in your community. And you're relative to what's happened regionally, you're also very high. So you're in an area where there are a number of other pretty affluent communities whose housing prices are also quite high. But yours have really accelerated, and to some extent, even beyond those communities. So a lot has happened here. There's been development, there's been production of units that count toward the 10% under Chapter 40B. A lot of the rental units at the nines are not affordable at all, but it doesn't matter because the project itself qualifies. And then meanwhile, of course, we had COVID, which really disrupted the market. So a variety of things have happened here that really account for why it's a good time to be doing a strategic housing plan. So this is just a chart. I'm hoping you can see it. It's just a chart of what's happened with housing sale prices. And it runs from roughly 2017 to last year. And the green band is condominium sale prices. This is the median sale price. And the yellowish band is single family. And you can see, where you are right now is well over $2 million for a median sale price home in your community, which definitely is not affordable to people at or below 80% of median income, and certainly not even affordable to those at 120%. Meanwhile, rents have also accelerated. So this is not only Wellesley data, this is your immediate, what we call a market subregion. Interestingly, this does not include the nines, because the nines rents are not yet in this particular data set, despite the fact that it goes through this, right up until this year. So the nines rents are actually much higher than this, but your median rent has continued to climb from 2018, which was the date of the housing production plan, up until now into close to $3,000 a month. And what the rest of that chart shows you is that the vacancy rate has continued to drop. It plummeted quite a bit in 2020 and 21, which is no surprise. It has kind of picked up since then, but it's still, just in that range of about 5%. We typically look for rental vacancies to be more than that, because that helps to stabilize the prices. The fact is you basically have no rental vacancy rate here. And then the annual rent growth is that sort of pink banner, and that's just the percent change. So there's been a spike in rent growth. The rent growth on a year-to-year basis has sort of stabilized and dropped a bit, but the rents themselves have continued to go up in excess of the increase in household incomes. So those are just two charts that might be interesting to you. We're going to be looking at a lot more data. When you come back to meet with us again, we will show you more information, but I just wanted to give you a little flavor for what's happening with sale prices and rents in your community in the immediate region. So we do have these stations. I'm going to explain them to you, and I will take a few questions, by the way, when I'm done here, but I want to explain what we're asking you to do. There are poster boards all around this room, And they relate to the following topics. One is a big what we call an orthophoto map. It's like a picture of the town. And we have stickers for you. And we're going to ask you, where in your community do you think different types of housing would be appropriate? And you get to decide. You get to pick from the stickers. There's single family, there's condominium, there's multifamily, there's bigger apartments. You get to decide. And you just put the stickers on the map where you think it's appropriate. We also have a station that just kind of lays out recommendations, action recommendations from previous plans, mainly from the Unified Plan and from the last Housing Production Plan. And we're asking you to just look at those recommended actions and decide, is this still relevant or not? Or you're not sure, you would need more information in order to answer. So there's like 3 options. You'll have little sticky dots. You can just put it in the appropriate column. I think this is relevant. I don't think it's relevant, or I would need more information. I will caution you that there are a few actions on those previous plan boards that we're confident have been met. We decided not to take them off because we didn't think it was appropriate for us to do that. So if you see something that you know your town has done, hooray. But we decided to leave all the recommended actions up there as they pertain to housing. There is a station on housing needs, and what we did with that in that case was list types of housing needs, frankly, that partially came up in the last plan, but also we've just tended to hear because we do so much of this work. And we're asking you if you think those needs exist in your community or not, or if you would need more information to decide. Similarly, there's a station on barriers to housing production, and they're barriers that we tend to hear often in planning projects like this, and that we also heard about in the last Housing Production Plan. So you get to look at those barriers and say, gee, I think this applies, or no, it doesn't. And for each of those stations, there's kind of another board, poster board, that's just, did we miss something? Is there something that you think should be listed here for a barrier or a need that isn't accounted for on the board that we created for you? And you can take a post-it note and write it out so we can get that input. You're not just confined to what we've presented to you to respond to with sticky dots. There is a board over on that side that really lists out the strategies that the Housing Task Force has asked us to look at. So they've not been picked yet as the strategies for this plan. They're strategies we were asked to review and consider for Wellesley. And at that station as well, there's another board where you can put up a post-it note that says, I think you guys missed the mark. This type of strategy should be included as well. So again, you're not confined to the ones that the Housing Task Force asked us to look at. And then the last station, as you go out this door, is what we call the ticket to leave. And the question we're asking you on that is, what do you think local government's responsibility is for housing? And that's entirely a post-it note activity. So those are the six stations, excuse me, that we're asking you to interact with as you go around the room. And there's no particular order in which you do that. It's entirely up to you. We'll try to sort of corral you around so we don't end up with too many people at one board at once. I do want to just explain the strategies, though, so everybody's clear. And I also just want to reiterate, we have not been told to include these strategies. We've been asked to look at them. So this plan may, in fact, have different strategies in it. It may have some of these, not others. We just don't know. We've only been working on this project for a few weeks, so please bear that in mind. One of the strategies is around data and monitoring. And the reason that's important is that communities don't always even know what they have in terms of affordable housing, housing in different price points. So what would we need to do strategically to be able to account for what we actually have? So that's one strategy we've been asked to think about what that would look like. Another strategy is around public-private partnerships. How could the town foster better collaboration between the public and private sectors to facilitate more development of affordable or market rate housing? So that's another strategy we've been asked to think about. A third is availability of housing at a range of prices. So we've been asked to think about strategies to ensure that there's housing available at a range of prices, including affordable that at or below 80%, the moderate income or workforce housing level, which just for percentage purposes, I can just tell you that's typically up to about 150% of the median for the region, and then market rate housing as well. So thinking about, do we have what we need in terms of just a range of prices? What about fair housing? So we have a federal law and a state law as well that address housing discrimination. And housing discrimination, people often think of as kind of being what realtors do. Realtors have to be careful that they're not discriminating in the process of selling property or renting it. Fair housing actually has much bigger implications, including for local government. And many communities today are kind of looking at, so do we have policies in our community that we need to look at because they may have what's called a disparate impact on people of color, on people who are lower income? Are some people harmed more than others by the kinds of policies that we have in our community today? Are there incentives other than zoning that the town could be thinking about, such as tax incentives to convert office space to housing, which could be perhaps done to further the town's housing goals? And then housing stability, what policies or programs should we be thinking about to improve housing for vulnerable populations such as veterans, the elderly, or families in crisis? And then the last two strategies are around quality of life. What strategies should we be thinking about to enhance the overall quality of life by ensuring that housing is located near amenities, parks, schools, and so forth? And then equity and inclusivity. How do we prioritize the distribution of housing opportunities and address historical disparities in housing access and affordability? So those are the strategies we're kind of starting with. And we're eager to hear from you about whether you think some of these just shouldn't be looked at, or if you think there are others that we should be that are not accounted for in this list. There will be, as I said at the beginning of this, many more opportunities to participate. We have established a website on a system called Social Pinpoint, which is an interactive website, and it's where we're going to be directing everybody to get information about this project as it goes forward. The site is live. That QR code will take you right to it. So we'll make sure you have access to that site as we go forward. But that is going to be the sort of go-to place for any information that's going on about this project. And it will be linked to the town website. So that is our presentation. I'm happy to take a few questions. And I will just say we're probably only going to take a few. If you have a bunch of questions, bear in mind no one's pushing you out of here. But that's part of why we have members of the Housing Task Force around these different stations, because you'll have more opportunity to ask questions as you go around the room. I'm going to start with the person who's closest to me. Ma'am, yes, you. Inclusionary housing? So typically inclusionary housing says, that's what I'm about to do. She's asking about how the inclusionary housing policy works. So inclusionary housing is if a developer is proposing a project of a certain size, there's a requirement to provide affordable units in addition to the market rate units in the development. So that's a fairly standard approach. I do believe your inclusionary is still at 80%, or did you increase it? 80% of median income.
15% is at 80, and then 5% is at 81 to 140.
Okay, thank you. So 15% are the affordable units would be for that group that I guess you would think of as Chapter 40B eligible, 80% or below. And then there's another percent for affordable units up to 140% of median income. So there's an attempt to get at a range of prices. Inclusionary means including affordable units. I'm going to try to repeat this for people because I know they can't hear. The question is, so inclusionary means that in a development with predominantly market rate units, there have to be some affordable units as well, created by the developer. Yes, sir.
I would suggest that we're operating at cross purposes. On the one hand, you've got the nines that are trying to get you into the correct percentage. On the other hand, I would suggest that the more affordable homes in Wellesley are the older homes, those built before a certain period of time. I live on Parker Road, otherwise known as Construction Central. I can tell you what happens there.
I should just walk around with this.
Call a realtor today. My property would would never be on the advertising. They would call 2 or 3 developers, they'd come in and buy it directly. The realtor gets the commission, gets the right to sell the McMansion. And so that's their end. I checked with the house that recently sold. That's where I found that information was from the developer. That price was equal to my house and my taxes. He told me what he would sell it for. The town would get an increase of about $24,000. Most of the McMansions come with kids. According to U.S. News and World Reports, it costs $25,000 per kid per year to educate in the town of Wellesley. Also, we're going to lose state cherry sheet or local aid money, because that's one of the factors that's used to compute how much Wellesley gets is the average price of homes. More McMansions, higher average, less money from the state. So we're shooting ourselves in the foot. We're also pricing people like me out of the town. My wife worked for the town of Wellesley School Department, driving special needs buses for 24 years. I work for Raytheon. I have a fixed pension with no cost of living. I've been retired 11 years. I've already lost 25%. In 2019, my taxes went up by 16%. In 2023, they went up an additional 25.3%. We got to watch what we're doing. We're shooting ourselves in the foot.
Thank you. And I would encourage you, when you get to the appropriate station about strategies, to write that down. That's great. Don't give it to me now. Give it to me in a minute. Yes, do you have a comment or a question?
Will the map we look at have an overlay of existing zoning?
We have a zoning map here. It's not overlaid on the orthophoto because it would have made it too busy.
But isn't that
No, actually,
a thing to know?
well, it can be, although frankly, when we do this activity, we often don't put the zoning on because sometimes what people think is appropriate may not be the same as what the zoning allows. So this is not an activity, it's not a quiz, do you know your zoning? It's a question about what do you think is appropriate. Yes. You have a question? Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you were raising your hand. 2 questions, yes.
You talked about affordable. Without the gibberish, how much money are we talking about?
So, it's all gibberish. Okay, think in terms of $96,000 a year for a household of 3.
That's not what I asked.
That's not the gibberish answer.
Well, if you're going to buy a unit, how expensive is that unit?
I see.
Between what price and what price?
Okay. Good question. Of course, it depends on interest rates and other things that you'll probably start to feel like is gibberish.
Cash purchase. Do you need any
Well,
more clarification?
You're asking about a sale price?
Sale price, yeah.
Okay. $288,000 to $300,000 for a single family would be a little bit less for a condominium.
In Wellesley?
No, that's the affordable sale price. I thought that's what your question.
That's not what I asked you.
Okay, what is your question?
In Wellesley, you're talking about affordable, are we not? That is that which is affordable in a project in Wellesley.
That's the answer.
Not in Timbuktu, in Wellesley. How much money does the unit go for in Wellesley?
In Wellesley, it will be about $288,000 for an affordable unit. Because you are part of the Boston metro area, it's not based on Wellesley prices.
And why did they lie to us before and tell us it was costing $900,000 at a previous?
I don't know. I
For
wasn't here.
affordable housing.
At Cliff Road.
I don't know. I don't know. I can't answer that question. I wasn't involved.
Second question. What if the citizenry just says, stop? You've complied with all of these regulations, stop. Leave the zoning, leave the development alone, and don't go around this merry-go-round saying, we're gonna kill 6 kids, no, only kill 2. If they like the way of life it is now, why can't we just say stop?
Because you can say that.
Oh.
Yes, you have an opportunity to say that tonight.
Stop.
I would suggest that you may want to get that on the strategies board.
So we can go, all of us walk around and just say that at every table?
If you prefer not to walk around to all the stations, you can just go to the one that you're concerned about.
All of them.
Okay, then they may, sure.
A few months ago, there was it's more than a brochure, we get a flyer, we get a flyer from Wellesley. And in the flyer, toward the end of the article on Wellesley and how bucolic this lovely town is, all right, it states that we were the first town to do single-family zoning here. And this one, and other zoning. Oh, it's written by someone in Wellesley. We all received the brochure, and I'll be happy to send it to you and to anybody else that wants it. we'll put it up somewhere. But this town was the first to do this zoning, that had the foresight to do this kind of zoning. And we are probably, most of us, single-family homes. I bet you almost all of us are opposed to whatever it is you're talking about. We hear that all of our requirements to the state or government have been met. Why are we doing this? And why, oh why, oh why? I don't know who she is. I know who she is. I don't know what her title is, manager or whatever of the town. Why do they take these developers and drive them into single-family zoning for multiple family housing? That's inappropriate. We've saved and worked hard to buy single-family homes in single-family zones, and to try and put something with multiple families in there is wrong. They're stealing the wealth from all of us. It's wrong.
I'm not going to debate
I'm not even
that.
asking a question.
I know you're not asking a question.
I'm not asking a question. I think I'm saying something that most of us are feeling.
Okay.
Okay.
And we may have slightly other priorities.
Thank you. Can you hear?
I just don't feel that this is the right place to debate that back and forth.
She's saying that it's not the right place to debate this. So I'm just going to, yeah, there are many people who do feel differently. So, which is a good thing about having a community. I hate to tell you. I mean, I've never gone to a community meeting where everybody agreed. I mean, in my career of 35 years, I've never been to a community meeting where everybody said, I think that's a great idea. This is your opportunity to say to us as the consulting team and to the housing task force, we don't want this. It's your opportunity to say we do, and we're going to have to sort that out. And that's the best answer I can give you right now. I'm going to take one more question, and then I'm going to say, if you have other questions, which we don't want to discourage, but I don't want to take this time away from these stations, you can talk to any of the housing task force members that will be stationed around the room. Yes?
Just a simple question. How was your group selected to be the consultant for this project? Was there an RFP project?
Yep, there was we responded to an RFP, and I forget the date.
You know, does the town, anybody from the task force know how many responses you all got from the RFP process?
Excuse me.
Or, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. This is your opportunity to engage with these different stations. And you'll find the colored dots and so forth. Alexis, where did we put all the meeting supplies? Here.
Thank you. So at each station, all of which are fairly visible except for the mapping one, which is, there's a map on the wall over there where our housing task force members waving. But otherwise, by each station, there are stickers for the ones where you're asked to kind of rank how you feel about whether a particular strategy or a need that's been identified, anything like that, to indicate your level of agreement. There are also sticky notes where you can add any comment. So all of those supplies are right by each station individually where there is a housing task force member. The other thing I do want to point out before you go on your way, when Judy referenced the social pinpoint site and the QR code, that is on your meeting agendas as well. So just make sure you take that home with you so you have that. And that will be updated throughout the project with different, means of engagement and whatnot. So just make sure you take that agenda home with you.
Thank you for mentioning that, because I knew it was somewhere. So really, there's no magic to this. We're just asking you to get up, go around, look at the different questions and information on the posters. And as I said, there are people at each station to help you in terms of finding meeting materials to engage with. And we encourage you to do that, and we look forward to seeing what you have to say.
All right, what's the question?
What do we do?
Okay, so there are different types of housing, building types. Okay? These aren't like ADUs or cottages, there's mixed use, there's anywhere from single family to all the way to like, a condo. And other things like senior housing and kind of special use. The idea is,
Where or do they not? That's kind of the question here. Some people like it the way it is, and that's great. And some people want to see others.
You want your stickers? You're not going to stick?
Thanks for coming, Mark.
All right. I guess Dave.
Are these good at all the stations?